Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the mounting pressure on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as we learned there were 4 U.S. military strikes on that alleged drug boat out of Venezuela. For the first time, Congress able to watch the full 5-hour video of that attack. Secretary Hegseth facing bipartisan criticism over the follow-up strike that targeted and killed 2 survivors. All of this amid the release of a new report concerning Hegseth's handling of sensitive information. The man suspected of planting pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters is arrested 5 years later. Tonight, what we know about the suspect and where he was found and what helped the FBI track him down after all this time. Disturbing new video shows ICE agents, some in masks, dragging a woman from her car, screaming as she's put in handcuffs. Meanwhile, chaos erupting during a city council hearing in New Orleans. Anti-ICE protesters taken away by force. The Vatican Commission makes a final say on whether women can serve as deacons in the Catholic Church. The art of singing hymns, less for religion and more for community. Hear the sweet sound of the sacred harp.
We sing sacred words, and to a lot of us, it is worship. Okay. To others, perhaps not so. We have Jews singing, we have Catholics, we have Christians, we have some Muslims. It doesn't matter.
And point your eyes toward the skies for a hint at 2026's Pantone Color of the Year.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos, in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with breaking news on a busy night in the nation's capital. The Supreme Court just handing down a major decision on redistricting. But for the first time, we're learning there were actually 4 U.S. military strikes on that alleged drug boat out of Venezuela, killing 2 survivors after the initial attack. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth now faces new questions about that operation. And we just heard late today a new strike killed 4. Congressional lawmakers getting their first look at the full video today. Multiple strikes unfolding over 5 hours. Previous reports said there were only 2 strikes. Secretary Hegseth facing bipartisan criticism over the follow-up strike targeting those survivors, and we are now learning there were 4 in all. Admiral Frank Bradley testifying behind closed doors, insisting there was no order from Hegseth to kill all survivors of the boat strike. All this comes amid the release of that new report concerning Hegseth's handling of sensitive information. We will speak to Secretary Hegseth's lawyer in just a moment. But first, Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raditz leads us off.
Tonight on Capitol Hill, Admiral Mitch Bradley, the commander who directed this attack on a suspected drug boat and follow-up strikes that killed 2 survivors. The admiral giving a quick nod when asked if he stands by his actions.
Admiral, do you stand by your actions?
Behind closed doors, Bradley and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane briefing lawmakers on the operation, which they revealed included the initial attack and then 3 follow-up strikes, killing the survivors.
In a second strike, they were killed, and in a third and fourth strike, the boat was sunk.
Lawmakers watched video of the strikes emerging with starkly different impressions.
What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service.
Democrat Congressman Jim Himes describing that second strike as an attack on shipwrecked sailors, something that would violate the laws of war.
You have 2 individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States.
Congressman Adam Smith telling ABC's Jay O'Brien what he saw.
2 people without their shirts on top of the bow of a capsized boat. There's a tiny little portion of the boat that was above the water. And they were there, just there.
But the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Tom Cotton, says he saw something very different.
I saw 2 survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs bound for the United States back over so they could stay in the fight.
Cotton calling the strikes righteous and entirely lawful.
I didn't see anything disturbing about it.
Lawmakers of both parties say Admiral Bradley told them Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did not give an order at the mission's outset to kill everyone aboard the boat. Hegseth says he only watched the first strike and didn't learn about the others until hours later.
I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting.
But Senator Cotton says the strikes were over in a matter of minutes.
I mean, they're several minutes apart. You had obscurance, both the smoke from the first strike and then cloud cover as well. I couldn't tell you exactly how long.
But minutes,
they weren't. I think minutes.
Tonight, Democrats are calling on the administration to release the entire video, something President Trump has said he would do.
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
And Martha joins us now. Martha, some lawmakers have seen the full video of the other strikes, but the outstanding question is still, will the public?
Exactly, Stephanie. We've all seen the video of that first strike, Democrats and Republicans giving very different versions of that second strike. And again, President Trump says he will support the release of the entire video for the American people to see. The question tonight is, when will that happen? At this point, we don't know. Stephanie?
All right. Martha Raddatz for us tonight. Thank you so much, Martha. Now to some breaking news. The Supreme Court tonight said it would allow Texas to move forward with a newly redrawn congressional map for the 2026 midterm election. Senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer joins us now. And Devin, this reverses a prior decision from a lower court. Is that right?
Yeah, it sure does, Stephanie. A lower court decision from a Trump-appointed judge, the Supreme Court's conservative majority just a few minutes ago, overruling that judge who had concluded after a 9-day trial, 3,000 pages of evidence that the new Texas maps that you see on your screen were racially gerrymandered, illegally discriminating against minority voters. And what the conservative majority on the high court said is that that conclusion was likely wrong, failing to assume the good faith on the part of the map drawers in Texas, and also unreasonably inserting the court into the political process so close to the midterm election. Now, Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, sharply dissented. They accused the conservatives on the Supreme Court of disrespecting the lower court's findings and disserving millions of Texans. But the bottom line, Stephanie, is that that Texas map, which was drawn to give an advantage to Republicans, adding as many as 5 seats in the House of Representatives, can go forward for next November's elections.
So interesting. And we certainly remember when dozens of Texas State House Democrats fled the state during the proceedings to prevent Republicans from moving to enact that new map. Very controversial. Now, Texas redistricting has, as you know, Devin, really sparked a national debate. And we've seen other states like California and Missouri also enact new congressional district maps. What does tonight's Supreme Court decision mean for them?
Well, typically, as you know, congressional maps are redrawn every 10 years after the census. So we're really in uncharted political territory here with all of these states, many states, redrawing maps for purely partisan gain. 6 states have already redrawn their maps. 4 states are in the active process of redrawing. Red states, yes, and blue states. But the bottom line tonight and the implications of this decision are that any current or future legal challenges to those maps are likely going nowhere, at least before those races get underway next November for the midterm elections. A lot on the line across the country now as these new maps are put into place, Stephanie.
There certainly is, and I'm sure many Democrats will continue to fight back. We'll see what happens. Devin Dwyer for us there in Washington. Thanks, Devin.
You bet.
Also from Washington, D.C., tonight a major break in the nearly 5-year investigation in the case of pipe bombs found outside the DNC and RNC headquarters during the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. The suspect, seen here, look carefully, seen there on surveillance video, is expected to be charged for allegedly planting those devices. Tonight, what we're learning about him and how he was tracked down. Here's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, after nearly 5 years of frustration trying to track down this shadowy figure who was seen on surveillance planting pipe bombs in Washington, D.C., the FBI says they have their man.
Early this morning, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested and charged with placing the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC on January 5th, 2021.
The 30-year-old Cole now in custody. Law enforcement swarming the home where he lives with his parents in the D.C. suburbs.
That's probably the last person you would expect.
The FBI says the potentially lethal bombs were discovered outside the headquarters of both the Democratic and Republican national committees. Just minutes before hundreds of Donald Trump's supporters breached barricades and stormed the Capitol, adding to the chaos and straining police resources.
We are dealing with an individual who is alleged to have made bombs. We cannot do this sort of takedown in haste because it endangers the lives of law enforcement.
For years, it seemed all authorities had to go on were the bombs and these grainy videos showing a suspect in that gray hooded sweatshirt, a mask, a distinctive gait, and a pair of Nike shoes with a yellow logo. Authorities said the arrest came not from a new tip, but combing back through millions of pieces of evidence they already had, including cell phone data that allegedly places a phone used by Cole along the route the day the bombs were planted, a photo that allegedly places his vehicle near the crime scene, and financial transactions they say show Cole bought materials from an area Home Depot that could be used to make bombs.
This case involved millions of pieces of data, and it is a huge win because it was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Cole's grandmother telling ABC News the family is completely shocked and that her grandson, quote, would not hurt a fly. Cole faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. And Stephanie, he's due in court as early as tomorrow.
Pierre, thank you. New evidence was revealed today in the case against alleged CEO shooter Luigi Mangione, including new images and more body camera video. Prosecutors say he used a fake name to escape from New York City. The shooting happening a year ago today. Our chief investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky was in the courtroom.
Tonight, exactly 1 year after the assassination-style killing of United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson on a New York City street, we are hearing the 911 call from the manager at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
I have a customer here that some other customers were suspicious of, that he looked like the CEO shooter from New York.
After customers say they spotted a man who resembled the suspect captured on surveillance video.
Is this individual still there? Yes, he's still in the back of our lobby by the bathroom. Like 6 customers walked up to me and I was like, okay guys, I can't really do anything. But he's wearing a black sweater jacket with a medical mask and a tan khaki colored beanie. The only thing you can see is his eyebrows.
Today, accused murderer Luigi Mangione sat huddled with his defense team, fighting to get critical evidence against him thrown out. Mangione's defense says police had no warrant or reason to search the bag, where police say they found a gun and a journal. In court today, Mangione watching as prosecutors played blurred video of him peeling off his clothes before officer cameras are turned off during a strip search. Police later seen on body camera footage pulling what they say appears to be a to-do list from Mangione's pockets with items like USB, digital cam, and a map of streets, along with notes, survival kit, hot meal, and water bottles.
And lots of attention on this case. Aaron joins us now. Aaron, how much longer will this hearing go on for?
Steph, this hearing's going to continue through tomorrow and into next week. Even the judge said that both sides were being duplicative and asked them to try to move this along a little bit as Mangione fights to suppress some critical evidence. But here we are, Steph, 1 year since the murder of Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan. And as you heard from that 911 call, one of the only reasons Mangione's seated here in court is because customers at the McDonald's said they recognized his eyebrows. Steph?
Aaron Katursky for us. Thank you, Aaron. Now to disturbing images showing ICE agents dragging a woman from her car in Key Largo, Florida. She's heard screaming for help, insisting she's an American citizen as she's placed in handcuffs. Here's Victor Okendo.
Tonight, dramatic video showing a woman being pulled from a car during a Border Patrol operation in Key Largo, Florida, screaming she is a U.S. citizen. The woman pulled over during a traffic stop yesterday morning. Video capturing her struggling with law enforcement, who then pick her up and carry her to a grassy area where she is handcuffed. Despite screaming she is a citizen, the woman is restrained and carried into an unmarked vehicle. The Department of Homeland Security telling ABC News the woman was driving her boyfriend's car, who is an undocumented immigrant, stating she was removed from the vehicle and briefly held while her identity was confirmed. She was promptly released once her identity was confirmed. It comes as the Trump administration expands operations into more cities. This week targeting Minneapolis and New Orleans.
You have to leave. Exit.
Where protesters carrying no collaboration with ICE DHS signs were forcibly removed from a city council meeting. Stephanie, that video that shows the woman being pulled from that vehicle was filmed by a Miami Herald reporter. DHS confirms she is in fact a U.S. citizen. Stephanie?
Victor, thank you. The Pentagon's Inspector General has released its report 8 months after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared plans to attack Houthi rebel sites in Yemen in a chat with his wife and several work colleagues on separate Signal chats, and unwittingly a reporter who was mistakenly added to the chat by then National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. For more now on this, we are joined by Secretary Hegseth's lawyer, Tim Parlatore, who was included in one of the Signal chats that prompted the IG investigation. Sir, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I want to ask you, before I ask you a question about the risks involved in this chat, I want to read to you part of the IG report. Here it is, quote, "The Secretary sent information identifying the quantity and strike times of manned U.S. aircraft over hostile territory over an unapproved, unsecure network approximately 2 to 4 hours before the execution of those strikes." Although the Secretary wrote in his July 25th statement to the DOD Office of Inspector General that there were no details that would endanger our troops or the mission, if this information had fallen into the hands of U.S. adversaries, Houthi forces might have been able to counter U.S. forces or reposition personnel and assets to avoid planned U.S. strikes. Even though these events did not ultimately occur, the Secretary's actions created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots. So, sir, 2 to 4 hours before these strikes, Secretary Hegseth declassified the information, is that right? And it was put into this Signal chat. Hegseth says he relayed only details that he thought could be declassified. As you heard there, as I'm sure you've seen this report, you're familiar with this IG report, the IG concluded is that had that information gotten into enemy hands, it would have put troops at risk. Does the Secretary accept the findings that if this information had gotten into the wrong hands, U.S. service members could have been at risk?
Well, first of all, that's not the findings of the report. That's a separate section that's really untethered to the rest of the report. Unlike the rest of the IG report, that section doesn't cite to any investigative steps taken whatsoever. Their mandate was to really go through and figure out how this happened, whether classified information was improperly disclosed, what procedures were followed or not followed. And so really that whole section, all that is, that's the opinion of one IG investigator is not supported. They didn't do a threat assessment. They didn't do an intelligence analysis. They didn't do a technical analysis. They didn't get any CENTCOM operational input. They didn't do a timeline analysis. They didn't do any of the things that would have been required for them to actually state any of those things as a finding. That's just a political opinion by one investigator. And, you didn't learn anything there. That's the same thing that anybody who doesn't like Secretary Hegseth has been saying for months. What the report actually found is that he didn't reveal any classified information. There is no finding of any wrongdoing. There's no recommendations that any actions be taken against him because he didn't do anything wrong.
So that section that I just read off, that we just quoted, that is part of the report. But it is, you would agree it's part of the report?
Correct. It's something that, quite frankly, it shouldn't have been included in the report because it's beyond the scope, and it's not something that they investigated. You'll see it doesn't cite to anything because it's not something that they looked into. It's just an opinion.
Well, as an Army Reserve officer with soldiers, I've got a lot of soldiers that use Signal, and they're often advised to not post, not discuss any sensitive information when they are on that chat. So would you say that listing off in the chat the quantity and strike times of manned U.S. Army assets is not sensitive information?
What I would say is that the then Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War, has the unfettered discretion as to what to declassify and what not to declassify. And he sent that information to the principals on that chat for very specific reasons, which he explained. That was something that was being shared with partner forces at the time. And it's something that the members of that chat were then going out and doing TV interviews like this shortly thereafter. And these were the details that they were allowed to come on and talk about after the strikes had occurred. So these are the things that he has the discretion. A junior enlisted soldier doesn't have the discretion to decide what details they want to declassify or not. The secretary does.
Does Secretary Hegseth have any regrets for how he handled this situation?
As the report shows, he was completely within his discretion, and so there's nothing to regret. Everything he did was completely within his legal limits.
Does he still use Signal by any chance?
So the use of Signal is something that, really the government as a whole, not just him, ever since 2020 has been, used and maybe misused. And it's something that, the IG did, point out. It's not a Hegseth problem. It's something that really we need to examine on a whole of government, or at least, within their scope, the whole of department, to figure out what's the best way, to use this. Because unfortunately, that is a secure end-to-end encrypted app that the government-issued cell phones don't have. And so we have to figure out a better way to communicate. Does he use Signal for any official communications at this point? No, he does not. He does it for unofficial communications only.
But would he agree, and would you agree, that had this information, whatever the information is that was posted on that chat, had that ended up in enemy hands, it could have gone fatally wrong?
That's an assumption that people are making without really knowing anything. The information in that chat, it doesn't give locations. It doesn't give any specifics. There's nothing in that chat that really could be used on the ground. And this is why, if they wanted to do a real investigation, they'd have to look and see, well, what were the routes? Were there anti-aircraft guns? If the enemy was able to get that, would they have actually been able to do anything with it? And that's an analysis that the IG, it was beyond their scope. And ultimately, when these planes take off from the aircraft carriers, it's obvious to anybody in the area. Any fishing boats can clearly see that. Anybody on the land can see these F-A-18s flying overhead. So did it put any troops in danger? Absolutely not.
The IG report also said the secretary would not sit for an interview with the inspector general and instead provided a short written statement. Why was that?
Right. We provided the written statement because that was the information that they needed. If they had any follow-up questions, they could have asked. They didn't. But cabinet members, they don't sit for interviews on these things if they're not required to. And when you read the report, seeing the inclusion of that improper opinion section, I think it's the right answer that you wouldn't have him sit with some GS-12 that wants to put their personal political opinions into a report.
And one last question for you. Investigators also found not all of the messages were preserved in compliance with the Federal Records Act. Were some of those messages deleted?
So that's inaccurate. All of the messages were preserved. They were preserved at the White House level, and so that's just a false conclusion.
Well, thank you very much for that information, Tim Parlatore. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
There was a decision today out of the Vatican on what leadership positions women in the church should be allowed to hold and what, for now, should be forbidden. Our Britt Clennett has more on that from Kyiv. Britt.
Stephanie, I'm here in Ukraine, straight from covering Pope Leo's maiden visit abroad. I saw the first American Pope as he spread his message of peace and hope in Turkey and then in Lebanon. But now, attention on the Vatican today in a different way. A commission said that women cannot be admitted to the church as deacons, saying it's not possible to reach a judgment at this time. But it did propose women should be given other leadership roles in the Catholic Church. Deacons are ordained ministers who perform many of the same functions as priests, presiding at weddings, baptisms, funerals. They can preach, but they cannot celebrate Mass. Now, this is the second study into this debate at the request of Pope Francis, who opened the conversation after a 2016 request from the Rome-based umbrella group representing the world's Catholic sisters and nuns. Both commissions into this, they were debated in secrecy, and Thursday's report, it is the first time that the results of the discussions have actually been been made public. The outcome, it is likely to be a great disappointment to church groups who've been pushing for women to be allowed to become deacons. Stephanie.
Britt Clennett in Kyiv tonight. Britt, thank you. Turning now to weather, we're tracking an Arctic blast sweeping across much of the country. Record low temperatures are expected from Chicago to the Northeast tomorrow morning, and icy conditions are making highways treacherous. Look at that. Dash cam video showing an out-of-control SUV slamming head-on into a snowplow on State Route 80 in Sherburne, New York. And a new storm is moving across the south and up the East Coast. Let's get to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from WABC. Hey there, Lee.
Hey, Stephanie. So that Arctic air has spread from the Midwest and Great Lakes into the Northeast. We had snow squalls across I-90 and I-88 on Thursday. Well, now that record cold will still be felt Friday morning. From Chicago to Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New York will be around 20 degrees and Boston around 14. Now, there'll still be gusty winds on the eastern side of this Arctic high, meaning we have sub-zero wind chills in Chicago, Fort Wayne, and Syracuse. It'll feel like single digits and teens all the way from Boston to New York. The good news is the wind does start to back down during the midday and afternoon hours on your Friday. Now, winter weather advisory is out for parts of the mid-Atlantic because the storm that soaked parts of Louisiana is attacking fresh Arctic air. So winter weather advisories work up from Tennessee into parts of North Carolina, into Virginia, even eastern Kentucky, and right up to Baltimore. So we could have a really messy morning commute with 1 to 3 inches of snow in these areas and maybe even a light glaze of ice. So there'll be travel delays there and a soaking rain in the southeast. Stephanie?
We'll have to avoid being outside for an extended amount of time or bundle up. Lots to look out for. Thanks so much, Lee. WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg. Authorities have named a person of interest after human remains were discovered at a home in San Diego. The San Diego County District Attorney's Office said 74-year-old Dwight Roan, a previous tenant at the property, is linked to the investigation. The case began when California Highway Patrol detectives suspected remains were on the property. Prosecutors say Roan is already in custody, charged with the murder of a man. Investigators say it's still unclear how many victims might be buried on the property. A federal vaccine advisory committee voted to delay a decision on whether newborns should still get the hepatitis B vaccine within 24 hours of birth. Confusion over voting language and last-minute changes led to disagreements inside the meeting. The current recommendations calling for a dose within 24 hours have been in place for more than 3 decades. The committee plans to take up the vote again on Friday. Coming up here on Prime, the Trump administration's immigration crackdown intensifies. Why DHS has now paused the applications of immigrants from 19 countries in the name of national security. And the power of the human voice to bring people together. There's little religion here, but there is a bit of magic. We bring it to you, the rhythm of the Sacred Harp. Plus, the Pantone Color Institute has made its pick for Color of the Year, what it says about the way we live. Welcome back. The Trump administration's immigration crackdown intensified after 2 members of the National Guard were shot by an Afghan national last week, just blocks away from the White House. Now the Department of Homeland Security is pausing the applications of people trying to immigrate from 19 countries. Let's take a look at this new immigration ban by the numbers. The application hold applies to people applying for green cards, citizenship, or asylum from 19 countries that ICE considers high risk, including Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia, and Venezuela. In a December 2nd memo, the Department of Homeland Security also announced that applicants from those countries admitted to the U.S. as refugees after January 20th, 2021, the start of the Biden administration, would be reviewed again to ensure they're not a national security threat. So, what are the impacts of immigration on national security and the economy? Well, according to a study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the likelihood of an immigrant being incarcerated is actually 60% lower than for a person born in the United States. And most economists say that green card holders positively impact the economy because the approximately 12.8 million green card holders grow the labor force and boost tax revenue. The foreign-born population generated about $1.7 trillion in economic activity in 2023, and that is according to the American Immigration Council. Coming up here on Prime, the curious all-day singing event bringing hundreds of people of all faiths or even no faith together. No musical experience required. And wildlife rangers had been looking for a seal on the loose. You see it there? But no one expected the fella to show up in a bar. That's coming up. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. Congressional lawmakers got their first look at the full video of the 4 U.S. military strikes on that first alleged drug boat out of Venezuela. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is now facing new questions as the investigation continues, with both parties criticizing the follow-up strike targeting survivors. And the FBI today arrested a suspect accused of placing 2 pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. the night before the January 6th Capitol riot. Attorney General Pam Bondi identified the suspect as Brian Cole Jr. Bondi added more charges were possible as the investigation continues. The Supreme Court tonight said it would allow Texas to move forward with the newly redrawn congressional map for the 2026 midterm election. This lifts a lower court injunction, which concluded the map was likely an illegal racial gerrymander. The court's conservative majority said the lower court failed to, quote, honor the presumption of legislative good faith. And finally, tomorrow afternoon is the unofficial kickoff for the 2026 World Cup with the draw of the pools each team will play in. The Department of Transportation held a press conference today to kick off celebrations for the largest sporting event of 2026 and will finally answer the question, who will the chosen countries have to take on to win it all? Can't wait. All right, coming up, it is a sacred instrument, our voice, and for some, it has a very special meaning. Our Steve Osunsami with an in-depth report. And check this out. Would you ride a roller coaster 15,000 times? Gosh, that's a lot. 15,000 times. The milestone just set. Welcome back. Senior national correspondent Steve Osunsami tonight is introducing us to a peculiar singing of hymns that for many is less about religion and more about community. The sacred harp is what it's called, and it's most frequently practiced in the South. It's a unique form of a cappella and choral singing of church hymnals and odes in the round that sounds like it should be the soundtrack of a post-Civil War period piece, and indeed dates back to the late 18th century. Today, it's attracting more young people than you might think. Steve Osunsami reports now from Atlanta.
Fa, sol, la, fa, sol, fa.
What's old is new again.
You may tell them, Father.
Sometimes every week.
La, sol, la, sol, la.
In small spaces like this one across the Western world.
When you're actually singing Sacred Harp properly, there's, I guess I would call it a rawness that is not in normal music of today.
It's not always magical, but sometimes it really is.
They bring no instruments, just the human voice. The sacred harp, they call it. A style of singing born in 18th century Europe that found its home in the American South. They may look like they're at a church revival, in a square, keeping the rhythm of the hymns with their hands. But there's no religion here.
We sing sacred words, and to a lot of us, it is worship.
Okay.
To others, perhaps not so. We have Jews singing, we have Catholics, we have Christians, we have some Muslims. It doesn't matter.
Helen Brown from Ireland
I think it's about time we sing.
is one of the many singers from across the globe who make the pilgrimage to America nearly every year. Singing at all-day events like this one. From morning to night in a peculiar 4-part harmony, with each part singing from their edge of the hollow square.
Before COVID, we would come over 2 or 3 times a year if we could, because this is where the heart of the singing is. I mean, we sing in the UK and we sing really well, but it's not like coming here. The The more you come, the more the music gets ingrained in you. And it speaks to my heart.
They sing some of the same old hymns that were in the 2003 Oscar-winning film Cold Mountain. Set at the end of the American Civil War, celebrating a chorus that was accessible to anyone at a time when people were doing well if they could read words, much less music. The Sacred Harp is also the name of their songbook, first published in rural Georgia in 1864. They update the book about once every generation.
This is the 1991 edition. This book has more than 550 songs in it.
Jesse Carlberg, a young father, wrote new songs for the latest book released this fall.
I was a music major as an undergrad. You know, I was in a totally different musical world. I was interested in experimental music, electronic music, and things like that. So this traditional singing where people don't need an audience as an excuse, you know, to get together, but they just want to sing and make music for each other, and it forms these kind of bonds that singers come to feel is akin to family. It was really moving to me.
They say the music on the printed page is easier to read because while it uses the same do-re-mi music structure that many people know, the notes are printed with different shapes.
The fa is a triangle, the sol is a circle or an oval, the la is a square, slightly rectangle, and the mi is a diamond.
The shape tells you how high or low the pitch is. Everyone will sing through the song then on these shape notes. Fa, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, sol, la. And everyone will be singing their harmony parts on those shape note syllables.
So my memory is this is an A in bass clef, right?
Yep.
Okay. So it's still the same A note.
It's the same. So we sing fa, fa, sol, la, sol, fa.
People with no musical training can learn the intervals between the fa and the sol, the fa and the la, etc. And they can learn to sight read music just by shape note.
And you don't even need to be able to sing that well to be welcomed here.
You don't have to have a beautiful voice. You're joining your voice with the person on your left and your right and across the square.
More than 700 people from different faiths and dozens of countries came to Atlanta one Saturday morning to sing from the new edition of their songbook.
The communal part of this is super important to you.
Some people we sing with each other almost every week, and other people we might see just once every few years. But we come to love these singers.
If you sing Sacred Harp, you're my friend, and we love you. It's family.
Where today can folks without any musical training have people welcome them in, say, hey, let's make music together. It's very unusual, but it's something I think that people want.
To connect with real people in person, it's a spiritual experience.
The sound just penetrates you. The sound penetrates you and just makes you come alive.
There's like this tension in it that always releases, and it's just really powerful.
They say here, every voice is holy.
Everybody draws you in, and as long as people want to sing, then they will be welcomed with open arms.
Such powerful harmonies, and it's so great that everybody's welcome. Helen, I might take you up on that. Thanks so much to Steve Osensami for that report. Well, coming up, the Pantone Color Institute each year picks what they call their color of the year. One of their executives is here for the big reveal and will explain exactly how such a decision is made. And just today, Ralph Lauren revealed Team USA's new look for the February Winter Olympics in Milan. We'll show you the vintage callbacks that have people talking. Team USA's look for the Winter Olympics is revealed. Why an evasive seal wandered into a bar in New Zealand. Not a joke. And the tiny piece of tech that helped reunite a dog with her family. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. A black lab who disappeared in San Diego was rescued after authorities found her swept out to sea by a rip current. The dog escaped from a house nearby during a football game, and her parents tracked dog Sadie to the ocean with the air tag on her collar. Lifeguards and Coast Guard officials searched the area with no luck, and then just as they called off the search, the dog was spotted about a half a mile offshore. Sadie was then tearfully reunited on the beach with her owners. Team USA revealed their Winter Olympic uniforms ahead of the opening ceremony of the Milan Cortina Olympiad next year. The outfits were designed by Ralph Lauren and sport red, white, and blue alongside cream-colored trousers and vintage-inspired sweaters. Completing the look are hats and mittens in the design of the American flag and brown suede alpine boots. Looking good. The Ralph Lauren team has been designing Team USA's uniforms for the ceremony since 2008. Keep your eyes high in the sky this week to see the last supermoon of the year. December's full supermoon, also called the cold moon, will be at its fullest tonight. This will be the last of 3 back-to-back supermoons this year. A supermoon happens when the moon reaches its nearest point to our planet, making it appear larger and fuller. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump took part in the annual lighting of the National Christmas Tree in Washington tonight as part of a tradition dating back to President Calvin Coolidge in 1923. The National Park Service said this year's National Christmas Tree is a 35-foot red spruce from the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest in Virginia. One Disney superfan is about to do something most fans only dream of. He's revving up his engine to break a record on his favorite Disney California Adventure ride. John Hale plans to hop on Radiator Springs Racers for the 15,000th time, and he documents each ride with a photo. Hale's love for the Cars-themed ride began in 2012 when he visited the park for the first time since having a gastric bypass surgery, 2 knee replacements, and losing over 150 pounds. He celebrated by getting on the attraction. Now he's getting ready for his 15,000th ride, and maybe one more after that. Patrons at a bar in New Zealand got quite the shock when a baby fur seal wandered in through the front door. Customers quickly tried to corral the curious creature out the back door, but the seal lunged into a restroom before hiding under a dishwasher. He didn't want to go. As it turns out, conservation rangers were tracking the animal after getting numerous reports of a seal on the loose. They removed the seal and released it back into the wild on a nearby island. Staff at the bar named the seal Fern and joked that the establishment now has an official seal of approval. Now to the color choice that surprised many in design. The Pantone Color Institute has chosen its color of the year for 2026. And for the first time in the Institute's 27 years of picking a color, it's a shade of white. I'm surrounded by it. To be precise, next year's color is Pantone 11-4201 Cloud Dancer. For more on the reveal, we're joined by Pantone Color Institute's Vice President, Lori Pressman. Welcome back to the show, Lori.
Thank you so much.
And you're wearing Cloud Dancer,
yes,
right?
Of course I am.
We're like floating on a cloud here. You know, this color has elicited a lot of reaction from folks in the design world. They may be tickled pink or seeing red, but what can you tell us about this color choice and how you went about in choosing it?
You know, what we do, this is a global team of people who I liken to color anthropologists. They can see the world through the lens of color, and we're looking at all the different influences we see showing up across design. And we could see this showing up whether it was in art, whether it was in fashion, whether it was interiors or product design. We're looking at new materials and effects, social media. And then from there, we look to see what is driving this. And when we look around and we see everything that's happening, the 24/7 hustle culture where we feel overstimulated and overcommitted, all these distractions coming in at us, and seeing how people were looking for simplicity, looking for clarity, just wanting to disconnect, just wanting to step back just a little bit, and really take that time to calm their mind, relax their mind, and open themselves up in a different way and see things above the clouds.
And this is the first time that Pantone has chosen a shade of white and has kind of stepped away from the bolder choices.
Yes.
What would you say to those that are underwhelmed and say that this shade of white isn't even a color? What would you say to those folks?
Well, I would say, I think we need to look at this a little bit differently. We're looking at a time where people want lightness. People want a little bit of serenity, and they're looking for things that are versatile. So when we think about a shade like this, again, it is that neutral white shade. So it goes with anything and everything. It provides scaffolding, as we would say, for the entirety of the color palette. So, okay, maybe you don't want to wear it on its own, but it goes with anything and everything. And at a time when we see consumers being so much more thoughtful about their color choices, wanting things that are accessible, things that are versatile, we think this made perfect sense.
So how do you decide on the color?
It's ongoing conversations. This is a team that is also working with many different clients, guiding them for color for product, color for brand, visual identity. So they spend their days researching, visual research, combing the streets, looking for new influences, and influences come from everywhere. We don't really start having a more serious conversation till probably around March or April. And then we wait a couple more months, and then we slowly but surely get to the place. But it's a lot of visual research more than anything else.
And along with this announcement, Pantone is also launching a creative initiative with artists that are using this color. So what can we expect?
Well, I think you're going to expect to see many different designs coming from many different artists around the world. The first one being Emiliano Ponzi, who has created this fabulous looking tote. We can't wait to see it. And from there, each month we'll be introducing other items. I don't know that I can share those with you yet, as much as I would like to come up with other creations inspired by Cloud Dancer.
Fantastic. Cannot wait for that. It is a great color, too, especially in the winter. I'm going to wear a lot of Cloud Dancer. It gives off this elegant look. Calm, airy, lovely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, too.
Pantone Color Institute Vice President Lori Pressman, thank you. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks for streaming with us.